All right, peace, everyone. Welcome to the Bible in Plain View, where our job is to help you understand your Bible a little better than you already do. So, my name is Brother Justin. My reader will be Brother Obi, and we're gonna go ahead and dive right into it. And we're talking about the law of the Lord, how it converts the soul. And in today's time, especially in the quote unquote modern church, you pretty much told us you don't have to keep the law. The law is old, and they frame it as something that if you do it, it's sin, or it's overly complicated, or that the Lord would change it. And ironically, the same individuals who follow that philosophy are the most lawless and doing the devil's work the hardest. So what we're going to look at is the law of the Lord converts the soul. And oftentimes people know when they come to God that there has to be some changes. I can speak for myself. Like before I found the word and trying to seek the Lord and trying to find God, I knew like certain things I had to stop doing. So when I told myself, okay, I got to serve God, I said I'm gonna stop doing the do without being married. No, then you start cussing and smoking, stuff like that. So you try to stop doing stuff because you know you can't just come to the Lord any type of way. So we're gonna start in Psalms chapter 19. So Psalms chapter 19. And when you look at the book of Psalms, this is what David wrote. And we're going to see with David, a man after God's own heart. So, which is probably one of the better examples to follow about the Lord's law. The Psalms 19 and verse 7. Whenever you got it, brother, go ahead.
The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple.
So we talking about the law of the Lord. It said it's perfect. So being that it's perfect, it came from a perfect being, it came from God. We don't have to tamper with it. We don't have to remix it. We didn't have to update it. Like the Lord laid it out there. It came from a perfect individual. And the law is showing you how God thinks. And the Lord wants you on his playing field, not the other way around. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. So when you start to change, it's because you start keeping God's commandments. And again, like I said earlier, there's a reason why the world is lawless. They haven't made that conversion because the law has been taken off the table of God. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. So you may not necessarily have an abundance of wisdom. You might not be the smartest, the sharpest knife in the shelf, as they say. But when you start keeping the Lord's commandments, you start becoming a wise individual. It's no merit of your own. That's what the Lord's law is going to do. What else?
The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes.
So the Lord's statutes, it says, all right, rejoice in the heart. Like once you really get into what the Lord has set in place, like it rejoices you to keep the Lord's commandments. And the Lord has statutes. When people say the Lord's laws off the table, like one of the Lord's law statutes is if Brother Obi did work for me at my house or something, I'm supposed to pay him that day because I owe him that. You take the law off the table, I ain't got to pay you. What standard you gonna hold me to? And another law talks about if your neighbor's property, his donkey gets astray and you got to hold on it, even though he hates you, you're supposed to hold on to that and give it back to him. But we take the law off the table, and I can kick your donkey in the head and throw it off the cliff and whatnot, and you can't hold me to no standard. So when people really say the law is off the table, you don't really understand like what you're saying. So now you're opening up the door to adultery, people trying to take your wife, or your wife going out. You open up the door to theft. You open up the door to coveting. But it's funny when someone comes in and steal your stuff. Now the law is involved. You can't be stealing. Nah, there's no law. Verse 9.
The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever.
Mm-hmm.
The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether.
So the fear of the Lord is going to open up so many avenues. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of your wisdom. The angels camping around about those that fear God. So your fear of the Lord is a good, healthy fear, not to the point where you scared to be in God's presence and ask him anything, but you can't just come any type of way towards God. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgment of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. So you can't find something that's bad in the commandments of God. It's people making it out to be a bad thing. And what it boils down to is darkness can't dwell in light, and people want to do what they want to do. People want to do what they want to do, and most of the time that people argue is a thing of, oh, well, you can't, no, but you get this. That's why you got things like my body, my choice, or I can do what I want to do. Like people don't want to be held to a standard, especially when it's God's standard. Verse 10.
More to be desired are they than gold, yeah, than much fine gold, sweeter also than the honey and the honeycomb.
So the Lord's commandments, they're supposed to be desired more than the precious metals and jewels of the world, because those things can be taken away, they decrease in value and whatnot. But the Lord's commandments, they're going to walk you into everlasting life if you keep them. And he's going to tell you that. What's next?
Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping them there is great reward.
And what's that reward? The kingdom of heaven. So in keeping the commandments, there's a great reward. That's the kingdom of heaven. So if the kingdom of heaven is attached to you keeping the commandments, what makes it bad? What makes it terrible? What's next?
Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults.
What's next? Go ahead.
Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins.
Mm-hmm.
Let them not have dominion over me. Then shall I be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression.
So keep back thyself from presumption with sins, or those sins where you're like, oh, well, man, God understand my situation. I got to work on the Sabbath. Like, man, I got to talk to his wife, things like that. So the Lord is, David's letting you know the commandments, he's going to keep back you from presumption with sins. The Lord is he's not a God to where he's going to bend his will for you. That's not how that's going to work. Let's go to Romans chapter 7. Romans chapter 7, because Paul understood, and Paul's going to detail what the law is. And this is well after Jesus done died and resurrected and ascended back into the heavens. You have the apostles going out and they're dealing with the message. And let's see what Paul ended up understanding and put into this letter to the Romans. So Romans chapter 7, verse 5 and 6, and we're going to skip to verse 7. Romans 7, verse 5 and 6. Go ahead, bro.
For when we were in the flesh, the motions of sins, which were by the law, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death.
So when we were in the flesh, when we weren't being obedient to God, we was moving how we want to move. When we was walking with the devil, it says, for when we were in the flesh, the motions of sin, which were by the law, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. So sin is what you find detailed in the law, and we were breaking all that until the Lord came. We had to be converted. Verse 6.
But now we are delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter.
So Paul is not saying we were delivered from the law as far as like avoiding our obligation to do it. What he's saying is you was delivered from the penalty in which the law brought. And you go back and read in Moses, I think it's Deuteronomy, either 24 or 27, I forgot which one, but it would say like, curses the man that put a stone block for the blind. So in other words, that was worthy of death. Breaking the Sabbath, worthy of death. You being an idolater, that's worthy of death. So the Lord came and died and resurrected. He put grace on the table. So now you don't necessarily get immediate death for your actions. That's what Paul is letting us know. So, and it's about serving the newness of the spirit, or when Jesus came, he brought a whole new regime in a way. With verse 7, verse 7, go ahead.
What shall we say then? Is the law sin? God forbid. Nay, I had not known sin, but by the law.
Mm-hmm.
For I had not known lust, except the law had said, thou shalt not covet.
So we can't say the law is sin. Paul is letting us know, nay, I had not known sin, but by the law. So there was no way for me to identify what sin is, what unrighteousness, iniquity, what was in error with God, unless the law has put it in plain view for me. Nay, I had not known sin, but by the law. For I had not known lust, except the law has said, thou shalt not covet. So now I understand what lust is, because the law letting me know thou shalt not covet, or you can't be wanting stuff that other people have. Go ahead, bro. Verse 8.
But sin, taking occasion by the commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead.
So now at one point in time when Paul said, when I didn't have the commandments, when I didn't have the law, when I was living how I wanted to live, I wasn't considering that stuff. that's a lot of us today, man. I wasn't worried about, man, when you was in college and you got that text at 2 in the morning, you know what you're about to go do. Or when you walked up in the party and you drank all the alcohol or whatever your vice was, you weren't thinking about God in that instance. But then when someone brought the commandment to your attention and it says sin revives, so now I become aware of what I'm doing. Now I'm in trouble, is what Paul's letting us know. What's next?
Verse 9. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died.
So now I've been made aware of what I was doing. So now it's like I die. And what Paul is really getting at is I had to start making changes of the person that I was. So I was killing myself. Go ahead.
And the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. For sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it slew me.
All right, so in the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. Not Paul saying that, man, it was tedious. What he's saying is I had to die, or like he said in another place, I had to die daily. This old me, the old person that I was, I had to put him off, or eventually he was going to end up dying. So what you're looking at is Paul is letting us know, going back to the Psalms 19, the law, once he became aware of it, it started a conversion. He had to change. He had to start, killing off his old self. And then at him saying all that in verse 13, what does he say? In verse 12, I'm sorry.
Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy, and just, and good.
This is Paul saying this in what? In 1, in the New Testament. 2, Jesus has died and long gone back unto heaven. And 3, his disciples were out preaching the gospel, and nowhere did they say, hey, man, that's wrong. We have grace now. So, and I stress this point because people get this misunderstanding that when you get to the New Testament, there's this whole way of doing things and not understanding. Go read his disciples. Shortly after the Lord ascended back unto heaven, they was keeping Pentecost, keeping the Sabbath, keeping the feast days, going about banging on idolatry. So at what point in time, what changed? Wherefore the law is holy and the commandment holy and just and good. So Paul, who a lot of people like to pull, you misuse statements that he made and create this doctrine. Paul's saying the law is holy, the commandment holy, just and good. Verse 13.
Was then that which is good made death unto me? God forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin, working death in me by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful.
So it says, was then that which is good made death unto me? God forbid. But sin, that it might appear sin. So sin, that it might appear sin. How so? Because the law is now showing me, this is what coveting is. This is what theft is. This is what loving my neighbor is not. So it's working death, but it's working good at the same time. Because now I'm aware of the wrongdoing that I'm aware of the wrongdoing that's taking place. Now I can start making the corrections to get about it, or I can start the conversion. Working death in me by that which is good, that sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. But that's the conversion that the law is going to have you to do. Let's go to 2 Kings 22. 2 Kings 22. We're going to look at this king who got the book of the law. It was given unto him because it was found, and he started making immediate changes after he got the book of the law. So 2 Kings 22. 2 Kings 22 and verse 1 through 2, because you ask people, would you want to live in a society where there's anarchy, where there's no law? They'll tell you absolutely not. Never. So you think God's gonna let you live in anarchy and it'd be okay? So it's like you just got to kind of start putting pieces together and start using this to use the good sense that God gave most of us, not everybody. So 2 Kings 22 verse 1 through 2. Go ahead, bro.
Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidah, the daughter of Adiah of Boscath.
Right.
And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, and walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left.
Just want to read about King Josiah so you kind of understand what kind of person he was. He walk in the ways of David his father. So he was obedient unto God, and he didn't turn to the left hand or to the right hand. So he stayed the course. Skip down to verse 8, because what's going to happen is he's going to send some individuals to go, pay the people to build up the house of the Lord, and they're going to mess around and find the book of the law, and it's going to be given unto him. Go ahead in verse 8.
And Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought the king word again, and said, Thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do the work, that have the oversight of the house of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest hath delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king.
So now the king is he's getting this book of the law read onto him, and like a good king, what's he going to do in verse 11?
And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes.
Because he understood, like, oh my gosh, we done messed up. We in trouble. But this is what a righteous king or a righteous person is going to do. And you kind of see it in your life when someone presented the word unto you and you felt bad, or you were convicted enough to to go research for yourself and find out that you was in error with God. One thing that happened to me was, first finding the word, someone sent me this article about what Christmas was. And I was just in my bed about 8 years ago, and I was just reading it. And the more I kept reading it, I was like, oh my God, Lord, I am so sorry. I didn't know this is what I was doing to make you upset. But again, the conversion had to happen. So this is what happened to King Josiah. And it came to pass, when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, he rent his clothes. Now go right into chapter 23 and start at verse 1, because what the king gonna do now, he didn't just read or hear the book of the law and say, okay, that's cool, well, praise God, and sat on it. He started to make actions. You're gonna start to see the conversion that King Josiah made. 2 Kings 23 and verse 1. Go ahead, bro.
And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great.
Mm-hmm.
And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord, to walk after the Lord, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and with all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant.
So the king, he in turn took the book of the covenant, read it in the audience of the people. They made a covenant of the Lord, and people stood on it. Like that, like they said, they stood on business. The king get ready to stand on business. Because what's the first agenda that he did in verse 4?
And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the hosts of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel.
So first order of business, we getting all these statues of Baal and stuff off the grove. We getting out the temple of God, and we're gonna burn it, which it should have been done by kings prior to that. So my man is making, he's putting in work. We're gonna burn all these idols. What else are you gonna do in verse 5?
And he put down the idolatrous priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that burn incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of heaven.
Next order of business, getting rid of all the idolatrous priests that was offering incense unto Baal, the sun, the moon, and the planets, to all the hosts of heaven. So doing the one thing the Lord told us not to do in Deuteronomy 24. So he done got rid of idols and groves. He's kicking out priests. What else?
Verse 6. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook of Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the woman wove hangings for the grove.
So he broke down the sodomite houses, or the houses where the gay guys are. He got rid of those, so broke down the houses. So we're seeing all these changes that King Josiah is making. So again, the law of the Lord is perfect. It's going to convert the soul. It's going to have you moving in a certain way, talking a certain way, thinking a certain way, carrying yourself a certain way. Verse 8, go ahead.
And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Jeba to Beersheba, and break down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city.
Let's get down to verse 15 and read that.
Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, had made, both that altar and the high place he brake down, and burned the high place, and stamped it small to powder, and burned the grove.
So we look at who's it said? Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the one who was it? I think he made 2 golden calves. He put one, said, y'all ain't got to go to Jerusalem to worship. You can come worship these guys right here. So he caused Israel to sin or err. Now you got King Josiah years later fixing the issues that he messed around and started. Verse 19.
And all the houses also of the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger, Josiah took away, and did to them according to all the acts that he had done in Bethel.
Verse 24.
Moreover, the workers with familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the images, and the idols, and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, did Josiah put away, that he might perform the words of the law, which were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord.
But see what it all started? So all this transpired because the book of the Lord was found. It was read in the presence of King Josiah. You saw the conversion, and he started making moves, kicking people out, burning stuff up. I think, and it also he slew a few people who was doing wrong. So that's to that extent, but that's what the law is going to have you start to convert and change. Like I said, Paul says, I die daily, and you can't stand before the Lord and the same person as you are. So you can't come as you are, as it's been taught to us in modern churches. Let's go to Matthew 13. Matthew 13. So Matthew 13. We're going to look at this parable. And the parable is stemming off, the seed and the sower, the 4 different grounds. And his disciples are going to ask him, why do you speak to them in parables? And they couldn't understand it. And the Lord going to tell them why. So Matthew 13, and let's pick it up at verse 15 to get to it. Because he asked them, the disciple asked him, why do you speak to them in parables? And he told them, long story short, it was for them to know the kingdom of heaven. To them it's not. And he's going to tell them why. So go ahead and pick it up, bro. Verse 14.
14. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, by hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive.
But why? So why couldn't they understand it? Why couldn't they hear it? Why wasn't the Lord's parables making sense? 15.
For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them.
So in spiritual, like they spiritually blind, spiritually deaf, they can't hear, too focused on other things, stemming off the parable. And it has to be a conversion. In other words, you got to start keeping the commandments. You got to start fearing the Lord. And then when you start doing those things, now the Lord can unplug those ears, open those eyes, and cause you to hear what he's saying. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I shall heal them. So the Lord has to again heal, but you have to be seeking the Lord as well. So that's why the Lord is speaking to people in parables. You had to have really wanted to understand what Jesus was saying, and two, it's for everybody, but it's not for everybody in the same breath. Right? So they couldn't hear. There's no conversion. Let's go to Hebrews 11, our last place, and just look at it. Because Brother Johnny brought up a good point yesterday in Q&A, and I wanted to go ahead and borrow that for a second. So Hebrews 11. So just stemming off the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. Let's see what happened to Enoch, because Enoch walked with God over 300 years. He was obedient to the Lord's word, and when you look at Enoch, you see what was supposed to happen to Adam and Eve before they had that conversation with the devil in the Garden of Eden, and you're going to see what's going to happen to us if we follow a suit and walk with God and keeping the commandments and being obedience. The Hebrews 11 and verse 5. Hebrews 11 and verse 5. Go ahead, bro.
By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death.
So pretty simple. So it was translated or changed. An example that we use is when you translate something in a language, you're changing it so I can understand it in my language, or you writing it down, whatever the case. So we know translate means to change. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death. So he didn't die. The Bible is very clear. Enoch is somewhere doing God stuff. Where he at, we don't know, but we know he didn't die. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because what?
Because God had translated him.
So the Lord gave him that spiritual body that we're aiming for this day. So God translated him, but why did he get the translation, brother?
For before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God.
That he pleased God, that he was obedient. So because Enoch pleased God, he walked with God 300 something years. He was obedient. The law of the Lord is perfect. It's the conversion of the soul. So it's your believing in Jesus and your keeping of the law is literally going to convert the soul. You're going to shed this body that we have now. You're going to put on an everlasting spiritual body. That's going to begin with you one having faith in Jesus, and you're going to have to keep his commandments and keep his law and change in this life. We don't have time to read it, but the word talks about the water, the washing of the word. It's that word that's going to start purifying you from the inside. You get the later change later, but that's the class for today. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. I thank you for your time. I hope you guys understand in Jesus' name.